I'm looking for a DC anti-hero. Oh, the one played by a former wrestling star. The one that can act? Oh, sorry. The one that can act only adequately? Oh, good. Found you. What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Anderson here, and this is DC's Black Adam. So going into this, I hadn't heard too much about it, which kind of figured it wasn't great, but I tried not to let my thoughts be swayed at all by the fact that I hadn't heard much of anything about this movie, because I just wanted to see what I was going to get out of this. And to be perfectly honest, it's kind of a mixed bag. For me personally, I think the movie begins and ends very sloppily, kind of cliche, not all that interesting. The middle part is more so where I got a little bit more interested in it. But on the whole of it, I can't really say this was a good movie. And there are a few different reasons why, but that goes more into the spoiler territory. And while I know this movie came out a long time ago, so obviously spoilers are not that big of a deal, I'm still going to put the spoiler warning on just in case for some reason somebody's watching this and hasn't seen the movie, just wants to get my initial thoughts. So what I will say just generically is this movie does have some interesting ideas with the character of Black Adam. I think the characters that are alongside him in this, the Justice Society as they're called, I think a couple of them do balance Black Adam's character. I think Hawkman and Dr. Fate are the two best parts about this. And then unfortunately you've also got Atom Smasher and Cyclone, which Cyclone wasn't bad, she was just bland. Atom Smasher, that got pretty bad, but I'll get to that in spoilers. But the character interactions are where I had the most fun in this one because they are treating Black Adam as more of an anti-hero, whereas the Justice Society are all a bunch of heroes who want to save everybody they can. Black Adam's much more of a, I'm just going to kill people because they're bad people. So there is an interesting dynamic there that I will discuss more in the spoilers because of what they do with it. But as with a lot of these movies, there is a MacGuffin, there's a main bad guy that ends up being the main threat at the end. And that's where this story does fall apart. It becomes very bland, it becomes very cliche. It's stuff you've seen before, probably 10 or 15 times in other Marvel and DC movies and products. So yeah, on the whole of it, I just don't think this movie really sticks the landing. I think it falls too much on those cliches instead of trying to do its own thing. And at the center of all of it, The Rock, while he does have his funnier moments in this, I think he can be a very comedic actor. Personally, I don't think he's a good actor when it comes to the more sentimental moments. And so there are a couple of scenes in this where you are supposed to care a bit more about his character. And unfortunately, I just didn't because the emotion wasn't really there for me. So those are all of my thoughts without any spoilers to it. So that is your spoiler warning. Again, I don't think anybody's going to be watching this having not watched the movie already because it's been a very long time since it's come out. I'm just now getting around to it. But digging in a bit more to the spoilers, it's kind of hard to dissect everything in this movie, so I'm going to more so tackle it from beginning to end, so that way I can talk about everything as it happened. Because first of all, the opening is front-loaded as shit with information. Full of narration, full of exposition. It was a lot to sit through. Between hearing the backstory for Teth Adam, which ends up not actually being the backstory, so we spent all that time hearing a fake backstory, which it does go to show what these people believe about his character, and so when it gets twisted on its head later, there is some intrigue in that, but at the same time, a lot of this narration ends up not being true, so it just feels like we're listening to all this for nothing. There are a couple things in this opening narration scene. First of all, the CGI, which overall, the CGI in this movie is better than some of the other ones. Definitely better than Wonder Woman 1984. But the opening scene was definitely not the highlight of the CGI, especially when the one guy was killed and tossed over the cliff. The blood trail was awful looking, and then his body looked completely fake as it fell. So it was not a good start to the movie. But on top of that, with that guy getting killed, something that doesn't make sense to me is why that would happen. Because if you're having all these people work for you as slaves to try to find this one thing you're looking for, and then they find it, and you kill them because they found it, why do they have the motivation to keep working for you to find what you're looking for? Like, that to me doesn't make any sense. And maybe the people just feel like they're weak so they can't rise up against them. But if you're going to die anyway doing what they tell you to do, why would you continue to do it under threat of death? Well, if I do it, you'll kill me, but if I don't do it, you'll kill me. Well, why would I want to make myself suffer by working for you if you're going to kill me anyway? I'd rather just die and let it be over with. You can't find this stuff without your workforce anyway. So it just seemed really stupid that they started with that. Maybe if they told everybody, hey, he's going to go live in the palace now because he found it, and then they killed him when they got there, that would be one thing. But he literally kills him in front of all these people, tosses him over the cliff. His body nearly falls on a couple of other workers, so it just makes no sense whatsoever. But after that, there's even more exposition because we're getting to know these characters like Ishmael, Adriana, or Adrian, I don't remember which one it was now. Amon, Adriana's brother Kareem? which I guess to talk about Kareem real fast, because he doesn't play in too much, but he is more of a comic relief character. And it kind of feels like he and Atom Smasher are guilty of what DC has done quite a bit, which is they give one character all of the comic relief. And while he can get a couple of funny lines, like his whole line with Dr. Fate about, I'm an electrician though, like that was a funny line, but that's about the only one that made me laugh. The rest of his lines were just not that funny, but they were intended to be funny. And I don't think that's on him. I think the writing just wasn't great for the comedy. And that was also shown in Atom Smasher, but we'll get to him in a second. But like I said, a lot of exposition with these characters. Ishmael as well. His turn was pretty obvious. It was kind of weird how it almost felt like they wanted to do a fake out with him. But we see this one guy, I think his name was Samir, maybe? His name escapes me. But we see him going to look for Ishmael, and then all of a sudden Samir's body ends up at the bottom of a cliff, and then Ishmael shows up in front of Adriana. Sorry, it's going to bug me now. I'm just going to look up the names. I'm terrible with names. So I was right about Adriana, and I was right about Samir. So boom, point for me. But he shows up in such a way where you're like, okay, so he just killed Samir, so he's the bad guy. But then all of a sudden he's being taken prisoner by the bad guys, and then it seems like he gets crushed by all these rocks. So it's like, oh, okay, well, I guess he wasn't. So how did they show up? How do they know where to go? And then all of a sudden you see him at the end of all of these opening events, and you realize, okay, he is the bad guy. It's just such a weird turn of events that they wanted to fake us out, but then fake us out again, but then fake us out. I don't know what they're trying to do here. But like I said, just so much exposition between these characters. There's one line from Amon that almost made me pause the movie and just have to take a lap, because it was so in-your-face expository when he was talking to the one guard, explaining to them what they're doing in their country. And it was just so bad. And I will say Amon's acting throughout most of the movie was fine. The biggest problem with him more so is about the character of Black Adam, which I'll get to in a minute. But for a kid actor, he did fine for most of it until the very end, whenever they have this scene where he's supposed to be motivating all of the people. That scene was so poorly done. His acting was so uninterested. All I could think was all these people watching him give this motivational speech. After he's done, I just expected them to go, what did he say? It didn't sound like he was shouting to a crowd. It sounded like he was talking like this, trying to get everybody motivated with no sort of projection in his voice. It was really bad. But so the exposition scene is done. Black Adam is out. He's going around fighting. The fighting scenes, like I said, the CGI was pretty good, although they did do a lot of slow-mo throughout the movie. Unnecessarily so at times, especially Cyclone. Hers was probably the worst of the lot, because they just kept randomly slowing her down every couple of seconds she used her powers. I don't know what the thinking was there. But the slow-mo in this opening shot is basically Black Adam trying to recreate Quicksilver scene, because everybody wants to recreate the magic of the Quicksilver scene, and it just doesn't work. You could see what they're ripping off, you could see what they're trying to do. I mean, heck, even the Superman scene in Justice League was better than this. So I don't understand the point of it, but we do see some cool kills in this. We're shown just how destructive he is, as well as how deadly he is. So in that sense, I thought it was a good opening battle for him. But as we continue, we're introduced to the Justice Society as they're on their way to go try to see if they can capture Teth Adam and keep him under control. And like I said in my non-spoiler part of the review, I think the two best characters in this are Hawkman and Dr. Fate. And first of all, Aldous Hodge and Pierce Brosnan, two phenomenal actors, so that really helped. But on top of that, I think the dynamic between these three is what really carries the movie. Because with Hawkman and with Teth Adam, you have the dichotomy. You have the one who is a hero, and he wants to try to save people, even if they're bad people, even if they are villains. He still wants to keep them alive. And that one scene whenever everybody starts booing him for saving the two soldiers, it does show how much he stands by his morals. Whereas Dr. Fate, I don't know much about his character. The only instance I've seen of him in my own personal viewing is playing Injustice, seeing sort of what a tortured character he can be, because he sees all of these different futures and how much that weighs on his mind. But of course, he's seeing the events of everything play out. I will say his ending is a little bit cliche, because throughout the movie, he's talking about seeing the death of Hawkman. And so in my mind, all I could think is, okay, but you're probably seeing your own death, right? And you just don't want to tell him that. And so while we do see the scene where Hawkman does get killed, but it's actually just a clone of him, because he's using the powers of Dr. Fate at the time, it's not the whole truth. And again, it is a bit of a cliche. We've seen this type of scenario before, where somebody who has seen their fate doesn't want to say what their fate is, because they know other people might try to stop them from what they're about to do. I mean, while Doctor Strange doesn't sacrifice himself in Infinity War when he gives up the Time Stone, it's kind of that same feeling of he sees what this leads to. So everybody else might try to stop him if he tells them that that's what he has to do. But again, the acting between those two and the dynamic that they have, bouncing off of a guy who just doesn't care about human life, who just wants to stop the bad guys no matter what the cost. There is something interesting there, and that is the best part of the movie for me, is watching them interact off of each other. And while the fighting does get a little tedious because they have so much fighting between them, not just when they first get there to stop him, but also a little bit later too, we have another battle between Hawkman and Black Adam. It did get a little bit much, but it shows how much Hawkman wants to stop him from just killing people. And I do appreciate the fact that he does stand on his morals so strongly. And it's not until the end, whenever basically a demon shows up, that he's like, all right, go do what you gotta do. But the other two in the Justice Society is where, unfortunately, things do fall a bit flat with this team. Like I said in the non-spoiler part, Cyclone's just not that interesting. She's a very bland character. Her powers, like I said, a lot of slow-mo involved for some weird reason. They looked very cool and colorful. I don't know why they needed to do slow-mo to constantly show her doing things, but Atom Smasher just got on my nerves. He's that character that can't really take anything seriously. He's making a lot of jokes. There's a lot of cringe comedy with him as well, where he keeps screwing things up. And it's just not that funny. The acting for him isn't bad. It's just not funny enough to carry the scenes. And it got off to a real bad start whenever they were talking about their powers. And for some reason, Al decides he's going to come up and go, so what are your powers? What do you, do? Who made that decision? Did they just let him ad-lib? Just go, hey, just go up and do whatever feels natural, and then he did that little move and they were like, looks good! Was the director absent that day? Like he was getting drunk in his trailer or something, so they decided, we're just gonna go ahead and run this scene without him, and then we'll fix it in post if we need to. And then he does that move because there's no director to tell him not to, and so we're left with one of the most cringy scenes I've ever seen in a DC movie. It was not a good start for him at all. And it didn't get much better, unfortunately. So that was definitely the weakest part of the movie for me, was his character. But moving along, the story becomes a lot more apparent because Amon gets taken by Ishmael. They think he has the crown, but he actually doesn't. And so then it becomes we're going to trade the crown for Amon because Amon left it in his room. They find it. And there is a really good scene in here that I do think is one of the stronger scenes in the movie, where they're discussing how they're going to handle Ishmael giving the crown, all of that. And Adriana does come up with a very good speech, basically talking about, look, you think there's just good and bad, but at the end of the day, I just want to save my son. I don't care how I do it. And there is some truth to that. It's something about anti-heroes that I think is so interesting. Most of the time, anti-heroes are just focused on taking out the bad guys. The way they do it is morally reprehensible at times, but some people will argue, well, they're taking out the bad guys, so that makes it okay. And especially in a situation like this, where Adriana just wants her son back, she doesn't care if he kills a bunch of people to go do it. And that does show why anti-heroes can be so interesting to discuss and determine whether or not an anti-hero in our world would be something to celebrate or would need to be something to be stopped. But that's the only real time that we get into that discussion. Most of the time, it's just the one side that thinks killing is wrong, and then Black Adam who thinks killing is fine. That's kind of the two sides just butting heads, disagreeing the entire movie, and that's the whole story. So it was really nice to have that one scene. I just wish we got maybe a little bit more of that. And this does lead into the overall theme of the movie that, in my opinion, was not well handled, which is they treat Black Adam as if he's just a hero, not that he's an anti-hero. They have all the themes of an anti-hero in here, but the way that people celebrate him, the way that they treat him, they praise him, he's treated as a hero. And I don't think that that works. Because the whole thing, whenever Man of Steel came out and everybody was freaking out because he killed Zod at the end of the movie, and some people were saying, oh, well, he's a new hero, he felt like it was the only thing he could do in that situation to save those people that Zod was about to kill. There's a lot of discussion about whether or not that was the right decision. But the main reason why it blew up as a topic of discussion is because Superman as a character, when he kills somebody, it typically leads to bad things. That's what Injustice was all about. Superman was not supposed to be a killer, because if somebody with that much power that almost nobody in the world can stop decides, I'm just going to start killing the bad guys, that causes a lot of issues, because who determines who's bad and who's good? What if one day Superman woke up and decided, you know what? Everybody who eats pepperoni pizza, they're bad people. Now all of a sudden, there's a lot of people who are in danger, and we can't stop him because he just wants to kill everybody that gets in his way. So the idea of having a super powerful character that people can't stop, just be willing to kill the bad guys, it doesn't really lend itself to being a hero. It does make it a little bit more concerning. And the thing is, I know there's a lot of discussion in this, and I don't want to get too wrapped up because there's a lot we could talk about. I mean, you think about in Marvel, obviously they've killed a lot of villains before. They killed a lot of the Hydra agents and stuff. But it does feel like in the world of DC, where these beings exist that are just ridiculously strong and unstoppable, basically a god. And he decides, I'm just going to kill everybody who gets in my way. I'm just going to kill all of the bad guys that are threatening my country, my city. To see that as like something to be worshipped and praised, I don't feel like that's the proper tone for it. Because again, there's a lot of gray area in that. What if he foresees something as a threat to their country that's not actually a threat? Now all of a sudden there's a lot of problems that can pose. So I just don't feel like the theme was really captured here very well. And for them to end with Adriana basically giving this holier than thou speech to Hawkman at the end, talking about, we need somebody who's a bit darker here. To me, that's not exactly the narrative that I think they want to explore, because there's a lot of problems that this can possibly raise. But continuing on with the story though, we get to the moment where Amon is being threatened by Ishmael. Adriana decides to give him the crown in return for Amon, and this gets kind of stupid because you give him the crown, how do you know he's not going to kill Amon anyway? Like, I know she's not thinking rationally because her son's in danger, but it still feels kind of stupid that she just went, yes, let me give this crown to this dangerous guy and he'll definitely give me my son back and won't kill me and him in the process. Just seems a little odd for her to make that decision and not go, same time. You give me Amon, I give you the crown. But of course, this is all apparently a part of Ishmael's plan because Black Adam does step in, saves Amon, but unleashes his power and anger, which kills Amon in the process, which is what he wanted because then he can be brought back to life. This is where the story gets real messy. Like this whole idea that Sabak needed, I guess, the human host to die so that it can be reborn with his power. I don't know how any of that makes sense. And of course, it also comes after it feels like the movie has sort of come to a conclusion where Teth Adam decides, I'm not going to use these powers anymore. I'll be put away because, like I said earlier, the whole backstory wasn't exactly what we thought it was. Apparently, it was his son that was given the powers. But then his son gave him the powers to keep him alive, but then his son died, so then he went in a rage and killed everybody. So like I said, very messy sort of wrap up for the story, but again, it's not the end. And don't get me wrong, I know they probably felt like they needed to have this epic conclusion where Black Adam saves the day. And he doesn't just go sleeping in some chamber owned by Amanda Waller and her group. But this feels very much like the end of Wonder Woman, the first movie. It feels like they just throw this random bad guy in to have this big superhero versus supervillain clash. Really wasn't necessary, to be honest. Like, I'm not saying him getting locked away is a great conclusion to his story either, because this movie was about him, and if it just ended with him locking himself away, it would be kind of a weird end to the movie. But with Sabak coming back, it feels like every other superhero movie we've ever seen. And so with that, that's sort of how it all ends. They fight for a little bit. Dr. Fate sacrifices himself to release Black Adam and give him time to come over and fight. He and Hawkman team up a little bit. For some reason, they have all of the people in, I don't remember the name of the city now, Canadec or something. It's not Canadec, that sounds like Canada. But they have all the people step up and start fighting back against the army of hell. What kind of army of hell can't stand up against random civilians with pipes? Like Uncle Karim is going through and just bashing their literal skulls in. How is that intimidating as an army? If he's able to just go through and just whop, whop, knock them all over the place. It just seemed a little bit goofy in that regard, but whatever the case, Black Adam does rip Sabak in half, and that's sort of where the story wraps up. Like I said before, Hawkman and Adriana have a little conversation where Adriana basically tells him off, says, no, we need this dangerous hero here to protect us. And then they end the movie in the most cliche way possible, where he's like, yeah, I think you were right. Teth Adam is a little bit outdated. So what do you call yourself? Have we not seen this done in awful movies before? Why would you do that and stoop to their level? Yeah, that's fantastic. Say that again. It's such a stupid cliche way to end the movie. Why would you do that? The beginning and the end is what really dragged this movie down for me. Because everything in the middle, there were things there that worked. There was back and forth that worked. There were themes that worked. But for some reason, the movie wanted to start with exposition and then end on stupid cliches and trying to end making us think, oh, Black Adam, he's a good guy. Who cares that he's willing to murder? Who cares about that? I know he's super powerful and we couldn't stop him if he just went crazy, but I mean, he's a good guy now. It just seems like a really, really bad place to end the movie. And then, of course, we have a little post-credits scene, which I don't know if this is actually going to lead to anything, but it's basically Amanda Waller threatening him, and then Superman comes in and it's just like, all right, we need to talk. So I don't know if this is even going to go anywhere, but on the whole of it, I think this movie, it ended up being mediocre because at least there were good parts of it. I can't say that about Wonder Woman 1984. Birds of Prey had a couple of decent moments, but on the whole of it, it wasn't that good. This one had some interesting themes. I will say the comedy as well. I didn't talk too much about it, but there were some dark humor moments that I did find kind of funny. I personally do love dark humor, so that might be why. But for instance, whenever Black Adam chucks the guy, Dr. Fate shows up. All right, bring him back. I can interrogate him. Did you already kill him? Guy falling in the background. You hear the thud. He didn't make it. There were some funny moments like that did get a chuckle out of me. So because there were parts that I was interested in, I can't say this was an awful movie. I can't say this is one of the worst things DC has put out, but I don't feel like it's one that's going to be particularly memorable. I think I will remember Hawkman and Dr. Fate. I think I will remember a couple of those themes that they had in the middle, but unfortunately I think it just ends up being a very forgettable movie, a very bland movie, which it really shouldn't have been. I think there's enough here with this character. There's enough that they've built up. There's enough of a story that you could have done something very interesting here and had a good anti-hero story instead of trying to treat him as if he's a hero worthy of praise. But that'll do it for all of my thoughts. So with all that being said, cue the outro. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching that review. I hope you enjoyed it. First and foremost, please leave your thoughts in the comments down below. I love having discussions with people, so whatever your thoughts were, whether you agree or disagree with me, please leave them down below. Obviously, no spoilers. Also, if you did find yourself enjoying this review and you want to see more, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps me out. I also have a gaming channel as well as a channel where I talk about soccer, so if you want to give those a follow as well, that would be much appreciated. And lastly, if you want to help me improve upon the quality of these channels, I do have a Patreon. All of this is in the description below. With all that being said, I hope you guys have a great day, and I will talk to y'all later. Peace out.